Why do two people making the same salary live totally different financial realities? One word: force. Hang tight, because this one might just change your perspective, how you see effort. Welcome back. So, in the previous video, the last 2 weeks, I've been talking about some amazing discoveries, insights as well. And I began touching on Newton's 3 laws of physics and how they even affect our lives, or how they apply in life today, because it's a law, right? I gave a quick overview of the 3 laws, and then last week we touched on the first law, which was the law of inertia, and I shared 3 power moves that we can begin to apply to leverage that law. Because here's something about a law that we should remember, is that a law is universal and it's transcendent. That means it goes beyond. It's no respecter of persons. It's no respecter of creed or culture or beliefs. And that also means now that the law has to work in any situation or circumstance. It can't just work in the United States of America. If you're in Africa, in Europe, in Asia, the law has to work the same. Think of the law of gravity. It doesn't just work in Africa or in the US, right? It works across the board. So anything that is a law, that's how it works. It has to work regardless. Okay? It can't just work for some people and not others. And Newton's 3 laws are exactly just like the law of gravity. They are universal law. And so they affect our natural way of doing things. Whether you know it or you don't, makes no difference about what the law does or doesn't. You see, before we discovered gravity, gravity has always existed. Always. And it affected us negatively in times and positively. Whether we knew it or not, it was always there. So are these other laws. And there are many others that we haven't discovered yet, that we are under the consequences of the disadvantages of them because we don't know them yet. I want you to start thinking about it. What are some of those laws that you don't know that is significantly impacting your life today? So in this video, I'm going to focus on Newton's second law, which has to do with force. And the second law, if I were to summarize it, it simply says again this, that the acceleration of an object is dependent on the net force applied to that object and its mass. So it has to do with force. But you're thinking now that, what has this got to do with me living my daily life? Or perhaps, what has this got to do with me achieving financial success? See, I have some notes that I took down because there's some aspects of some things I want to share, and I want to give it to you in a way that I thought about it. I don't just want to mix my words on this one this time. So pay attention, because it does. And like I said again, this is also personal for me. It's a discovery, and it's a great insight, because few years ago, I used to work over 40, 50 hours a week just to meet ends meet. But as much as I was working, my finances didn't look like I was making much progress, right? Didn't look like I was making much progress. In fact, I thought maybe, I wasn't working hard enough. So I actually started looking for a second job. I actually did. But I found out, thanks to the discovery and the insight I began uncovering from this law, that it really didn't have to do with me being lazy. It had to do with leverage. And Newton's second law would help to uncover that leverage for us. Because think about it. Force equals mass times acceleration, right? So here's the thing. Wealth is not just, wealth isn't just about how much you do. Yeah, because a lot of times, even me, I used to think so, but it's not. It's about how fast you do the right things and how many of those right things you are doing. Let me say that again. Wealth isn't about how much you do. It's about how fast you do the right things and how many of those right things you are doing. So let's put this equation or this law into reality. Let's bring it down. Let me bring it home. Let me put it this way. Force equals to mass times acceleration. So let's look at mass. What would mass look like? Let's look at an application. For mass, that has to do with the number of opportunities or habits that you've created. Think about your habits and how often you're repeating those habits. That's your mass. Or the things you have to do and the number of opportunities that you may have. That's your mass. If you have more income streams, that's your mass. If you have more new skills or you focus on developing new skills, that's you increasing your mass. What about acceleration? Acceleration has to do with speed of execution. Here's an interesting thing. You have to figure out how to compress your decision to action gap. For a lot of us, our decision to action gap is so wide. And that is something that Napoleon Hill shared in his book, Think and Grow Rich. He said in his research, can you imagine this is someone who did a lot of research over 20 years. He said he found a common thread amongst the wealthy, and he also discovered a common thread among the poor or those who were struggling financially. And here's what he said. He said he noticed that the wealthy, they were quick at making decisions, but very slow to changing it. And the reverse was true among the poor. He said they were so slow at making decisions and quick to change it. Now, when you hear that word decision, what comes to mind? Because for some of us, we think a decision is a choice, but a choice is different. A decision has to have corresponding action for it to be considered a decision. In fact, the great Peter Drucker often used to say this, that if your decision doesn't have corresponding action, then it is at best a good intention. So no decision exists without corresponding action. So if you tell me that you have decided to do something, the next thing I would like to look at is your actions. And so then we have to compress that time when you make the decision and when you start executing. Because for some of us, yes, we decide, but we take so long. So pay attention to that, because that has to do with what? Your acceleration, your speed of execution. And now what is force? Now the force is the result you're looking after, the financial outcome, the financial influence, the income streams. That becomes your force, right? So here's the formula that I want to share with you to keep in mind, because it boils down to this, is that the effort you apply plus the number of quality repetitions equals to your real progress. Think about that for a minute. The effort you apply plus the number of quality repetitions equals to the real progress you're going to make. That is profound. And when I began understanding that, I began realizing that it really has nothing to do with just working hard. We have to understand some of these laws so we can truly leverage them. Because like I said again, whether you know it or not, it exists. And it would either work for you or against you. So now, I want to talk about 3 power moves that you and I can begin to apply to truly leverage these Newton's second law. Move number 1, I call it stack your mass, which means multiply your repetitions. Because here's the question. Or let's think about this way. You can't build influence or income on minimal inputs. So to scale results, you have to scale what's going in. It could be calls, the offers, the ask, or the connections. You have to scale that. You scale that, then you're also going to scale your results. So here's the playbook. The first thing we want to do is we do an audit. How many income streams do you currently have? That's the first audit. Just audit yourself. How many? Or how many would you like to have? Then now we want to double at least one lever, something that can help us. Let's say you're in a business where your phone calls is critical to enabling you to get a certain outcome. If you do 2 calls a day, double it to 4. If you publish every week, if you're creating content and you do it once a week, try it twice a week. Because as you start increasing that frequency, you're boosting your momentum. Okay? And as you boost your momentum, remember again, I said, what if you're going to scale your results? You have to scale what is going in your input. So we have to scale our input. But now here's the question. What would it look like if you simply doubled the actions that are already working? So take an audit, assess what you've been doing, and identify what has been working. What would happen now if you doubled what has been working for you? What would that look like? Another question I'd like you to think about is this. I wrote it down. I want to say it the way I wrote it. When you think about your current effort, what's the one thing you've been tolerating that's holding back your multiplication? When you think about what you've been doing, what's that one thing that's been holding you back? And let me add this to you because I want to put some framing around it. Luke 6:38 says this, give and it shall be given unto you. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over, right? Shall men give back? But I wanted to pay attention to this. You must give first. You must give first. So yes, if you want to receive, or if you want men to give back to you, at that measure, you have to start the giving first. The input must come from you. That's move number 1. Power move number 2. Shrink the lag time. Again, close the gap between decision and execution. This one is so profound too, because most of us don't lack ideas. We lack activation speed. Acceleration comes when you build a bias towards action. A lot of us will build our bias towards waiting is so wide and strong. We have to start building a bias towards action. And I saw this in my life about 3 or 4 years ago when I started understanding things about finances, how money works and all of that. And I began realizing how so many times I was penny wise and pound foolish. I quickly noticed that if I'm going to free myself of this, I have to start making decisions quick. In fact, sometimes when I did, my wife used to get angry because I'll tell her, you're wasting my time. Make that decision and let's go. Because when you understand the value of money, you recognize that your time is more valuable than money. I'll give you an example. If I sat down with a client and that one conversation can lead me to make thousands of dollars, I'll be more willing to pay someone to cut my lawn for $60 because that 1 hour that I spend with that client is making me way more than me spending an hour cutting my grass. That's a hint for you. Try to set, because here's a playbook now I want to share. Set a 24-hour rule. No more than a day between your idea and your first step. No more than a day between the time you think about something and when you go to work to start something, your first step. Sometimes you can block. Another one you can do is block 90-minute, what I call 90-minute money work sessions at peak energy. Think about it. Try to yourself. Schedule your time. and look at things that you can do and block that time to do some effective work. But I call it money-making activities. Focus on money-making activities and put in that energy into it. Because here's a question now that you have to ask yourself. How many opportunities have passed you by, not because you said no, but because you said not yet? Power move number 3, measure the right force. What do I mean? Track your results, not just activity. Because you don't grow what you don't measure. What gets measured gets optimized. So now here's a playbook you can apply. Weekly review. How much actual output did you get with respect to your time and energy that you put in? You got to look at that. So that way you can assess and understand your impact. Because now here's the question. What would happen if you track your financial wins like a professional athlete tracks their reps and scores? If you look back 90 days from now, what specific metrics would tell you that your momentum was multiplied? One of my mentors always used to say this, that we have to inspect what we expect. So you have to have a way of inspecting what you expect. Otherwise, how do you know you're making progress? Here's a scripture to tie this in for you. Proverbs 27 verse 23. Be diligent to know the state of your flocks and attend to your herds. In today's language, this simply means is track your cash flow and your calendar, because those two things will help you tell you what's happening with your money, what's happening in your life. Let that sink in. Because I have this to say in closing. Your breakthrough isn't waiting for you. It's not waiting for more time. It's waiting for your multiplied mass and faster acceleration. You have to execute fast. You have to. So, drop a comment if you're ready to become a force to be reckoned with. Because in my next video, subscribe now, in fact, I should say, subscribe now. Because the next video is going to flip your entire perspective about resistance. Because I'll be talking on Newton's third law. You don't want to miss that one. So subscribe now. Put a comment in the comment section. Share this with some friends. And remember, with all of your getting, get understanding. Have a great day.